Right. Look, that was an excellent session to the presenters before. I'll just tell you a story from Monday night. I got called. I had a big day at work, and I got called by my friend in Qatar, and he said, "Mate, would you mind going and checking on this guy? I think he's dead." Basically, I live in Abu Dhabi at Saadiyat Beach. My friend is a medical person, but this was an emergency worker. I basically went to Al Raha Beach, and I did find that his friend had died. And he'd probably died 3 days ago. Now, there was a lot of alcohol there. He was in chronic pain. He had tablets. We don't know whether it was an overdose. We don't know whether he just had a heart attack. There's going to be an autopsy. But that just happened Monday night to an emergency worker. And it just shows you this is a real thing. He didn't have family. His family, he was divorced. He's got 2 kids. For 3 days, he just wasn't answering his phone. No one knew what had happened to him. And I went there and I found out that he was dead. The security guard had actually told his friend that he was dead, but he said, "I can't call the police, I can't call the ambulance, that's not my job." He could smell that there was something, and he'd opened the door and gone in to find him, but he wouldn't call the police or ambulance. So that's why I had to go over and call the police and ambulance. And to be honest, I was there till about 1 o'clock in the morning, just trying to deal with her family and friends. So it was very sad. It happens to many emergency workers, not just firefighters, but to doctors, nurses, police. It is a tragedy that we have to do something about. I'm going to talk today about firefighting foams. I work with Mubadala Health. We've opened up an office here in Dubai. I'm also the medical director of Capital Health Screening. That's where you get your visa test, and that's where if you come into the country, you'll get a chest X-ray and a HIV test, and I'm the medical director there. But we also do occupational health. We take care of workers. So Abu Dhabi Ports, a lot of companies, ADNOC. We have a number of companies that come and they screen their workers. But I want to talk about PFAS because I think it's a big issue, and I'm surprised when I talk to my medical colleagues, a lot of people don't know about it. Here, I'm in control. All right, first I want to talk about air pollution because I think it's important you understand that air pollution is having an effect, and firefighters, they breathe in polluted air all the time, at work and outside of work. Smoking, everyone knows smoking causes disease. Firefighters' health, we've talked about this before, but you do have a lot of risks. You breathe in a lot of, you are exposed to a lot of chemicals, a lot of air pollution, and you do have a very dangerous job, and it does put you at a significant number of health risks. I'm going to talk about PFAS chemicals and the fact that one of them has just been made carcinogenic. It was in December 2023. PFOA has been classed as a carcinogen, causing kidney and testicular cancer. And I'm going to talk about the EU ban on PFAS. Now, occupational diseases are due to exposures in the workplace. And we've got all this research that shows that there are things that are associated with other things. So if you're exposed to PFOA, it's associated with cancer. If you're exposed to a lot of traumatic events, it's associated with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Air pollution. It lurks all around us, preying on the young and old. It slips unnoticed past your defenses and assaults your lungs, heart, and brain. Its deadliest weapons are invisible, poisonous particles that can be as small as a molecule. With every breath, they break through your lungs' protective barriers. There, they trigger inflammation as your system tries desperately to fight back. But these tiny intruders penetrate those defenses, lodging toxic compounds even deeper, sowing the seeds of cancer. They slide straight into your bloodstream, sabotaging your entire body. They inflame and constrict your blood vessels, increasing blood pressure until, one day, causing a stroke. The particle prowlers dislodge fatty plaque that may have built up from your diet. They weave clots that can be deadly blockers of blood flow to your heart or brain. With each new case of heart attack, stroke, lung disease, or cancer, air pollution adds another life to its hit list. Let's stop this invisible killer.
WHO says air pollution kills 7 million people a year. COVID killed just over 7 million people in 4 years. Air pollution is a killer, and you guys are often, when you're called to these fires, you breathe in a lot of polluted air. Now, I know you've got a lot of protection these days. You've got breathing apparatus. You protect yourself from that polluted air. But I'll show you that sometimes you can't wear that mask all the time. Another thing is smoking. I think everybody here knows that smoking causes heart attacks, causes strokes, high blood pressure. It's bad for you. You guys are what we call passive smokers. It's like a person who's sitting in a house and breathes in the smoke of their husband or their wife who's smoking in the bed or in the car with them all the time. Those passive smokers will actually get disease just like the smokers do. And you are exposed to smoke. I mean, that's your job. You're often called to deal with fire and smoke. Now, this is in Australia. I'm Australia born, Australia bred, and I worked in Indonesia and Vietnam and Qatar and many other countries. But Australia has been having a lot of wildfires, and we've had some nasty deaths from wildfires. Now, you can't wear your mask for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. These fires go on for weeks on end. If you have a look here, I think like an occupational physician, when I see a photo like this, yes, they're heroes, but I say, hold on, he's wearing a duckbill mask. This guy's not wearing a mask. And I start thinking, why aren't they wearing their protection? The truth is, people can't wear masks all the time. You're going to get exposed, and it will create risks. Now, firefighters are very courageous, but they also they die sometimes. We've heard about people who have died in the fire in the Bellagio Mall. 2 people died there. We've heard about the deaths of firefighters, but 48% of firefighters who die on a scene die from a heart attack, not from being burnt. Only 5% of firefighters died from burns. Heart attacks are more dangerous than the fires. Now, this is a typical sort of firefighter as they get a bit on. You know, basically, in Australia, we have all these firefighter calendars. When they're young and they start work, they're really fit, they go to the gym. But by the time they've been in the fire service for a long time, they've been exposed to a lot of chemicals. Those chemicals, the PAHs, all the smoke, it actually makes you more prone to fat. So you can keep going to the gym. I go to the gym, but I still can't lose all the weight. As you get older, you get a bit fatter. And because of all those chemicals, you saw with the air pollution, it goes into your heart, it goes into your brain. It actually causes damage to the vessels there. And then you can die of a heart attack. And we were talking about mental health. A lot of mental health is actually due to poor blood supply in the brain. We see this as people get older, they get depressed because the blood supply to their brain isn't so good. Sometimes it's not just the traumatic events. Sometimes the fact is your brain is not getting enough oxygen as well in some areas. Now, firefighters have a higher risk of cancer. It's been classified as a carcinogenic occupation. 2 times higher risk of testicular cancer, multiple myeloma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, skin cancer, brain cancer, malignant melanoma. I don't have to go on. You get a lot of cancers. Most of you people here would probably know a mate who's got cancer, someone who's worked in the fire service. Most of you people here would probably know a person who's had a heart attack. The chemicals that you get exposed to contribute to those cancers. And the problem with a lot of those chemicals is we can't measure them 20 years after the effect. A lot of these chemicals you'll have the PAH, say polyaromatic hydrocarbons, the toxic twins, carbon monoxide, hydrogen cyanide. They'll basically be gone from your system. You go to see the doctor, he'll do a test, it all looks normal, there's nothing there. But there are some chemicals that hang around, and one of them is PFAS, and I'll talk more about that. This is actually firefighters in special protection. Firefighters are expected to take risks that would be unacceptable in any other work environment. They waive the right to refuse dangerous work and accept the risk. It is our interest to compensate them for this risk because the work has to be done. And I think the first speaker said, it's our duty to make it as safe as possible. So in Australia and in many other places, we have what we call presumptive legislation. If you've been working for 5 years and you get brain cancer, you're covered. You get it compensated. If you get bladder cancer, kidney cancer, all those cancers that you get a high risk of, you get compensated. And many Western world, many fire services have this presumptive legislation. I've only been in the UAE for a year, but my understanding is that there is no presumptive legislation here for firefighters. So I'm not sure exactly what happens. I really don't know because I'm relatively new, as I said. PFOA is interesting because it's been linked to testicular cancer and kidney cancer. Now, for a while they said it's a 2A, which means, oh, we're not sure whether it causes cancer or not. But in December last year, it was called a carcinogen. So that means now that it's IARC listed as a class 1 carcinogen. It does cause cancer. So people who sell you firefighting foams with PFOA in it, they're selling you something that's carcinogenic. And I understand it's been hard because the other firefighting foams, the fluorine-free firefighting foams, haven't been as good. But now those firefighting foams are tested and they're putting out fires just as effectively as these dangerous foams. Testicular cancer, I won't show you how to examine your testicles right here, but we should all be feeling our own testicles. It's important that you check your testicles. Kidney cancers are often asymptomatic. You won't know you've got it. Unfortunately, the only way we can often find it is we find it incidentally when we do a CT scan. Or there's some blood tests that can show it up, but they're often not done by your GPs or anyone like that. So a lot of kidney cancers are spread before we find them. Now, PFAS is a chemical that we've been using in firefighting foams for many, many years. I'm from Australia, as I said, and 20 years ago, we started phasing out firefighting foams in New South Wales. But my understanding is that we still use them here. And so you've got 20 more years of exposure to this stuff than Australia has. Well, New South Wales anyway, where the other states took a little bit longer to start phasing out these foams. What we see in the USA, this is not firefighters, this is actually the level of PFOS and PFOA in the public. Because what happens is the firefighting foam gets into the water supply, gets into the food supply, and it's a forever chemical. So you can actually see that in 2000 they had high levels of this chemical, and it's gone down over the years because they've stopped using PFOA and PFOS as much. We still use it in places, but the bans are coming in. Both these guys here have kidney cancer, stage 4. That means it's spread. Unfortunately, their prognosis is not good. But firefighters now are actually suing. So these guys actually went to court and said, I want my treatment paid for. I don't want my family to have to pay for my treatment. And so the guy at the top had a judge say, yes, his treatment has to be paid for by the city. As I said, it's asymptomatic. It's spread. The cancer, death is not pretty. On Monday night when I saw that guy, he died all alone without a family. It's not pretty. Dying of cancer is not pretty either. It's painful. And it actually puts a lot of strain on the family members, as we just discussed. Now, this is the thing that should scare the bosses most, and this is what is happening in the US. Back in 2016, that's less than 10 years ago, there were hardly any cases about PFOA. And then look at this, it's gone 11, 54, 98, 793, 1,223, 1,736. The firefighters are now suing in the US, and they're getting paid money. Now, if these were Bangladeshi or Nepalese, I know that they probably wouldn't have a chance, but 98% of firefighters here are Emiratis. You know, they're the people who live here. They're they're your colleagues, and they deserve to be compensated if they get cancer. They deserve to have their cancers treated. It's important. But if you don't listen to the doctors, you'll end up having the lawyers talking to you. And I'm married to a lawyer. I think I'm a lot nicer than my wife. Sorry, private joke. What we're seeing now is because PFOA has contaminated the food, contaminated the water in Australia. So like the UAE, Australia is a desert country, and our groundwater is actually very precious. We saw a lot of contamination around bases. They would put these military bases in the country area where we have cows and there's not that many people, but the cows around that area are full of carcinogens. Now, when you go and order yourself a nice Angus steak or a Wagyu steak from Australia, you don't know whether that's come from Oakey or Williamstown. They don't test for PFAS because it's only just been made carcinogenic. So I know where not to buy steak from in Australia, but you guys don't. And I'm sorry about that. I think soon we'll be testing food for these carcinogens because you don't want to eat a piece of steak with a carcinogen in it. I was involved with a lot of Senate inquiries about this chemical in Australia. And there was actually a very large, I lived at Nudgee Beach, I like kite surfing, and there was a large spill of PFOA, firefighting foam from Qantas, into the Brisbane River, and it went around to Nudgee Beach where I live and where I kite surf. And so I was involved with that as well. There's been very large court cases in Australia as well as the US. And I told them, I said, look, the thing with PFOA, yes, okay, maybe we're not sure it's carcinogenic at the moment. Obviously it is now. But we know that you can test for it in the blood. And if you can test for it, then people are going to get angry and say, why have I got this carcinogen in my blood? And that's what's happening. You know, you're probably getting cancer from your PAHs, from all the other exposures you've had to the plastics, the burning plastics and the acrylamides and everything else that you do in a firefight. There's so many chemicals. I was involved with the Tottenham fire, which was a toxic fire, and all the fish in the creek died. You're exposed to millions of chemicals, but those all gone. You can't test for it and sue on those chemicals because they're not in your system anymore. They've disappeared. But the PFOA and the PFOS are still there, and they can be tested, and then you can be sued. And that's where I told the Defence Force that, look, I think you better do something about this because you're going to get sued. They were very slow in reacting, and they got sued, $132 million. They got sued by all the landowners around the military bases. And the class action, it was Shine lawyers. You know, the lawyers really are making a killing out of this PFAS thing. PFAS is on the Stockholm Convention. So that's the baddest of the bad chemicals, DDT, dialdrin, all the nasty chemicals on the Stockholm Convention. This has been on PFAS and PFOA. PFOA and PFOS have been on the Stockholm Convention since 2012, 2018. They're persistent organic pollutants. That means we call them forever chemicals. Once you pollute the water supply, it's really hard to get it out of the water supply. And all these areas around Australia, they're all the sort of country areas where the military bases are. They've all had court cases. So 3M has just been ordered to pay $10.3 billion to clean up because of the pollution of the water supply in the USA. Now, that's a lot of money. You know, the government in Australia is actually thinking they might try to sue 3M because they sold them the product and they've had to pay out $150 million. So now they want some money back from 3M. So the lawyers everywhere are trying to work out how are we going to pay for all this? It's going to be as big as asbestos, if not bigger. So what we're seeing is that PFAS bans are spreading. The European Union's banning it. The United States, several states, every state does things differently. They're banning it. Canada, Norway, Australia, as I said, is banning it. The Commonwealth were the slowest because they have the military, and the military want to put out fires very quickly, so they didn't want to stop using the fluorine-free. They didn't want to stop using the PFAS-containing foams. But now that the fluorine-free foams are just as good, they're switching over to that. China's still making it. You know, China, I think they're not environmentally as responsible as other countries. They'll still sell you this stuff. They're not telling you that this has been... has anyone been told that PFOA is carcinogenic? I swear, I've asked doctors, I've asked multiple people, and I don't think anyone's been told that PFOA is now carcinogenic. And what we're seeing now is it's in your water. Actually, I was noticing we've got EVN water. I check the water bottles because some water bottles are done by reverse osmosis, and that actually gets rid of all the PFAS. EVN's one of them, so I'm glad we've got EVN water. I can drink it with peace. If your water is from a natural spring and it's only filtered and it's not reverse osmosis, there are water bottles out. You can look it up on the internet which water bottles are good and which water bottles are not good. I'm not going to tell you because that's not my job. But it's not only that you're getting exposed from PFOA and PFAS at work, you're also getting it in the water, you're also getting it in your meat, in your food supply, your eggs. PFOA is actually, and PFAS, they actually get up in the rain, and when it rains, you can actually see that the rainwater now is higher than the safe level, according to the USA. So if you drink rainwater, you're going to have PFAS in your system. So this EU-wide restriction is justified as the risks posed by PFAS are currently not adequately controlled. So they're banning it in the EU. The chemical industry is actually spending a lot of money, and they have for a long time, to try to keep selling this foam. But I think even they are beginning to realize this is it's a losing game. We have to somehow find other foams, and there's been a lot of great research to show that to get these new foams that are safer for the environment, safer for your people, safer for the public. The European Union, well, sorry, you've seen all that before. I just wanted to finish by saying I think that this is an issue that a lot of people don't know about over here, and I feel like it's something that we should know about. I suspect that well, I just don't think that it's talked about a lot from what I've seen. I've only been here a year, but I keep asking people about PFAS, and not many people seem to know about it. So my view is that this is a dangerous chemical. My view is that we do have now safer foams we can switch to. And my view is that we can actually now do things for your firefighters. We can actually test their blood, and we can make their lives better. We can actually stop them from having heart attacks because you find their lesion in their heart and you put a stent in. You can actually see that they've got higher PFOA in their blood, and you can test it. You can actually go and donate blood every 3 months, and that will reduce your level of PFOA, so you've got a lower cancer of risk. We can actually do things if you know about it, if you know about the risk, but you have to know about the risk so you can deal with the risk. And that's why I just wanted to talk about PFOA and PFAS to you today. And I'm happy to take any questions. I do want to say, look, you guys are heroes, and what you've done is great. And I think, in a way, it's unfair that this has happened, that you're being exposed to carcinogens at work. But we can put systems in place to make it safer for you. We can actually ensure that you get checked. I'll just say one last point, and that's the cost of this test at the moment is 4,000 dirham, 4,050 dirham to test for all the PFAS chemicals in your blood. Now that's a lot, and it's not covered by insurance. So I've talked to firefighters. I see a lot of firefighters at Health Point where I work. They want early retirement. They've got bad backs. They've got their knees are gone, or they've got firefighters that have a risky job and they get health problems when they get older. But none of them ever had the test because it's too expensive. So if you want to know about your PFOA level, I've done tests for people in Norfolk Island and Australia, and I honestly believe a lot of your cancers are coming from the other chemicals, not from these chemicals. But the problem is that's the chemical you see. That's the one that's still in your blood. So when you do the test, they get worried. But at least we have treatment for that test. We can take your blood. You can donate your blood. We need your blood anyway. So donate your blood, and your levels will drop. And I'm happy to take any questions.
In terms of exposure, are we talking like acute or chronic exposure to these chemicals? What level of exposure would lead to results that you're showing?
Yeah, sure. Well, you saw that graph. I mean, most people, the public in general, in the USA, their levels used to be around about 5 for PFOA, and now the public's around about 2. So the average average PFOA in a person who's not a firefighter, just someone walking around the street, it might be 2. But when firefighters, we often see that the levels are higher. Now, the great thing is that you guys have put in a lot of protections. You're wearing your scuba, your SCBA. You're actually decontaminating your clothes because you actually see the PFAS and is caught in the clothes as well. It doesn't tend to go much through the skin. It seems to be more from where the firefighting grains. When you do all those drills, it gets contaminated in the dust, and then the dust is blown up, sandstorms, that sort of thing, and you're breathing it in. But also you're getting contaminated through potentially, contaminated water, other things. When you look at firefighters, the levels aren't that much higher, but it's sort of a mark on how many fires you've fought. Because as I said, PFAS goes up into the rain. So if you're fighting a fire and you're spraying it with PFOA and PFAS, you actually, sometimes it'll evaporate and you'll be breathing it in. if you're not wearing your device. And this is what happens in the afterburn. You know, while you're firefighting, you've got all the mask on, but then you go for, sometimes it's 3 or 4 days you're dealing with afterburn, and that's when you get a lot of exposure to chemicals because you're not taking the same precautions. That's the time when you can be breathing it in, it can be blown into your system, and obviously you get exposure through food as well. But what I saw in America is that some firefighters who had introduced, when we did the test, the levels weren't that much higher, because if you do use that protection, you can actually reduce that level of PFAS and PFOA in your blood. Yeah. Yeah.
And part of my daily tours was checking the vehicle, and I'd go up on the roof, I'd open the foam tank up, I'd check the foam was in there. Sometimes I'd get my hand in, just check how deep it was, come out, close it.
Yep.
You know, in those days we didn't wear PPE and things like that.
Yeah.
Now, in light of new information, obviously, question mark lights in my head, and I'm thinking, So you're saying I could easily come to you, just get a test, you can measure the level of PFOA,
but
PFAS,
you know, 4,000 dirhams is a lot to pay. You know, I feel like, you know, I did a test called HBG80, and that picks up a lot of those cancers, and that was 1,700. And my wife was saying, well, Andrew, that's too expensive. But I did the test on myself, and I'm intermediate, and I've got to repeat the test. But that's the sort of test we can do for firefighters. But you know, a lot of people don't have 1,780 dirham, let alone 4,000 dirham just lying around to do the test. And as far as I'm aware, it's not covered by insurance at this stage. So yes, you can come to me and I can do the test, but it's going to cost you probably 4,050. If we can get a study going, because this is what happened in Australia, we got a pilot study and then we did a big study on all those people exposed, and the government paid for all the tests, and then you can actually, you know, do a proper epidemiological study and look at the risks and define the health effects. They're still ongoing, those studies. But it is something that I think the firefighter here might want to think about, to look at what's happened in the US, to look at what's happened in Australia, and work out where they're going to go with this. Because I'm sure that you've all been exposed. The question is how much.
That was my question too, yeah. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Doctor.